All right, Raiders Nation, let's talk about what went down because yesterday's game left a lot of people shaking their heads. It was one of those matchups the Raiders should have handled, a game that felt like it was right there for the taking, and yet we walked away empty-handed again. And now everyone is pointing fingers at one man in particular, Gino Smith. The big question on every fan's mind right now is simple. Should the Raiders actually think about benching him? On the surface, it sounds dramatic. It sounds like the kind of hot take you hear the morning after a rough loss. But the reality is Gino's play has been so bad that this is no longer just noise from the outside. These conversations are becoming louder and more serious. And honestly, they're not without reason. Let's lay it out. Gino is wearing that number 7 jersey. And ironically, he's also thrown 7 interceptions already this season. That's not just bad. That's brutal for a team that's desperate to steady the ship. He has looked nothing like the quarterback he was in Seattle. Under Pete Carroll, he never played this poorly, not even close. For 3 years, he was steady, sometimes even impressive, but what we're seeing now is the worst version of Gino since his Jets days. And that's saying a lot. When you lead the entire league in interceptions, when your QBR is buried near the bottom, when your touchdown-to-interception ratio is a mess, fans are going to demand change. Now here's the tricky part. As bad as Gino has been, the options behind him are not exactly encouraging. Kenny Pickett, Aiden O'Connell may be coming back from the injured reserve. These aren't upgrades, not right now. And that's the frustrating truth. You want to hold Gino accountable. You want to see him push to actually compete for a spot. But when you step back and look at the depth chart, the Raiders simply do not have a better option. That's the harsh reality. He's bad, but he's still the best quarterback you have on the roster. And it's not like there's a miracle free agent waiting out there. No, Ryan Tannehill is not swooping in to save this team. There's nobody on the market who's going to come in and suddenly make the Raiders an offensive juggernaut. But still, the numbers don't lie. 22nd in completion percentage, 25th in QBR, 27th in quarterback rating. He's tied for 12th in touchdowns. But that stat is hollow when you're also on pace to throw 30 interceptions in one season. 30. To put that in perspective, only one quarterback has thrown 30 interceptions since the year 2000, and that was Jameis Winston back in 2019. That's the company Gino is keeping right now. It is historically bad play, the kind of season that derails franchises and crushes fan bases. And when you watch him throw 6 interceptions in just 2 home games, you start to realize this isn't a slump. This is something much worse. It's not just about the turnovers either. What makes this even harder to swallow is the context. In Seattle, in domes, Gino played 14 games and only tossed 5 picks in those environments, all while throwing 30 touchdowns. Now, in Las Vegas, he's falling apart inside a dome, the exact opposite of what the numbers told us to expect. That disconnect is maddening for fans because all the preseason metrics suggested he could be a top 10 or at least top 15 quarterback this year. Instead, he looks like a shell of that player, and Raider Nation is forced to sit through another chapter in this painful saga where veteran quarterbacks arrive in silver and black only to collapse. Gardner Minshew had his worst football here. Jimmy Garoppolo fell apart here. And now it's Geno Smith's turn. That's the curse that feels like it never ends. Every time the Raiders go out and get a veteran passer, it ends up the same way. Fans hoped this time would be different, that Gino could stabilize the offense, especially with a new system under Chip Kelly that looked more dynamic than last year's disaster. But the reality is the stats from these first 4 games look nearly identical to those of Garoppolo and Minshew, except with even more interceptions and fewer wins. Minshew, after 4 games, was sitting at 2 wins and 2 losses. Gino is at 1-3. Jimmy G's numbers? Just as bad, maybe even slightly better in certain categories. That comparison makes the frustration even worse because it feels like the team is stuck in an endless cycle of rinse and repeat. And then you hear Pete Carroll's words saying they haven't reached the point of considering a benching, and it just doesn't sit right. Pete preaches competition every single day, but how can you tell players on the roster they need to earn their spot, then turn around and let Gino slide when he's playing this poorly? That's where the double standard stings. Guys like JPJ fight tooth and nail to prove themselves, and when they do, they barely see the field. Meanwhile, Gino continues to start regardless of performance. It's hard not to call that hypocrisy. Fans see it. Players probably see it too. And if you're trying to build a culture where every job is up for grabs, then the quarterback position can't be exempt. Still, as angry as you want to get, it's tough to actually pull the trigger on a benching. That's what makes this whole debate so exhausting. On one hand, he deserves to be benched. His play warrants it. He's been bad enough to lose his job. On the other hand, he has to keep starting because there is no one else better. That's why this feels like such a nightmare scenario for Raider Nation. It's not just bad quarterback play, it's being trapped with bad quarterback play. You can't escape it, you can't replace it, you just have to suffer through it and hope he turns it around. And maybe he can. That's the hope you cling to. Gino has said he'll get it fixed. Pete believes he'll get it fixed. And maybe deep down, we all want to believe that too. Because if he doesn't, this season is headed straight off a cliff. You cannot win in the NFL with bad quarterback play. You cannot win when you're handing the ball to the other team week after week. That's not even an opinion. That's just reality. And right now, the Raiders are living that nightmare. What makes it sting even more is that the rest of the team showed signs of life yesterday. Ashton Janney, for example, finally had the kind of breakout performance fans were waiting for. He looked like a true every-down back, showing speed, vision, power, and patience. The offensive line opened lanes, and Janney took advantage, ripping off chunk runs, even breaking away for a long touchdown. He proved that when you put him in situations that fit his strengths, he could be a difference maker. 21 carries, 138 yards, a touchdown, averaging over 6 yards per carry. That's legit production, the kind of game that normally fuels a win. But all of it was wasted because the quarterback couldn't stop throwing interceptions. The offensive line as a whole deserved credit too. 240 rushing yards on the ground, the most ever in a Raiders loss. Think about that for a second. They dominated up front. They gave the team every chance to win. And yet, because of turnovers, because of bad decisions at the most important position in football, it still ended in heartbreak. That's the kind of thing that eats away at a fan base. It's why so many are ready to throw their hands up and declare the season over. And yet, here we are, trying to hold on, trying to find a light in the darkness. Raider Nation has been through worse, and loyalty runs deep. But make no mistake, this is one of the most frustrating stretches in recent memory. Because it's not about effort. It's not about talent at other positions. It's about being held hostage by bad quarterback play again. And unless something changes soon, unless Gino finds a way to flip the switch, this season will spiral faster than anyone wants to admit. Raider Nation, let's keep this conversation rolling because the frustration isn't just about one player, even though Gino Smith is at the center of it all. What's driving people crazy is the cycle that keeps repeating itself. Year after year, we hear the same promises about fixing the quarterback position, about bringing in someone who can lead this offense, and yet it ends the same way. The veterans come in, they were the silver and black, and for whatever reason, they end up playing the worst football of their careers. You could go down the list. Gardner Minshew came in and looked completely lost. Jimmy Garoppolo showed flashes in San Francisco, but with the Raiders, he fell apart. Now Gino Smith, who showed enough in Seattle to earn a real second chance, has turned into a turnover machine in Las Vegas. Fans are tired of hearing the same excuses, tired of being told that things are going to change when the results on the field never match the talk. And what makes it worse is that statistically the similarities are impossible to ignore. When you line up Gino's first 4 games with the Raiders next to Minshew's or Garoppolo's, it's scary how close they are. Attempts, completions, yardage, touchdown numbers, interceptions. These lines are almost identical. The only big difference is that Gino's turnover problem is even worse. And in the most important column of them all, wins and losses, he's behind. That's the stat that matters most. Raiders fans don't care if their quarterback has a few more passing yards if the team is still 1-3. That's where the frustration comes from, because the story feels like it's already been written before we even reach the halfway point of the season. Now, I know there are fans who want to believe that Gino can turn it around, and I don't blame anyone for holding out hope. This game has a way of surprising you. Players can go through rough stretches, get things corrected, and bounce back. But if we're being real, the leash is short. The margin for error is tiny in the NFL. You can't afford to dig too deep of a hole in September and expect to climb out of it later. Every turnover, every wasted possession is another crack in the foundation of the season. And right now, those cracks are turning into full-on breaks. What makes this even harder is watching the rest of the roster fight and give maximum effort only for it to be undone by mistakes under center. When the offensive line has its best game of the season, when the run game finally looks explosive, when the defense is giving you opportunities, and you still walk away with a loss, that cuts deep. That's the kind of loss that lingers for days. Because it tells you the pieces are there, but they're being sabotaged by one position that simply cannot afford to fail. That's why fans keep screaming that something has to change. And yet, here's the dilemma. You can't just sit Gino down and throw in someone else. Not when Kenny Pickett and Aiden O'Connell are your other options. That's not a solution. That's just moving the problem around. And that's what makes this situation feel so hopeless at times. Fans don't just want a new name under center. They want competence. They want stability. They want a quarterback who can protect the football and give them a chance to win. Right now, the Raiders don't have that. And so, as much as everyone says bench him, deep down we all know it's not that simple. Now let's talk about what Pete Carroll said, because this is important. Pete has always been about competition. Compete every single day, earn your spot, nothing is guaranteed. That's his mantra. But if you're going to sell that to the locker room, you have to apply it across the board. You can't tell the offensive line they need to fight for every snap. You can't make young guys like JPJ scratch and claw just to get reps, and then turn around and give Gino a free pass no matter how bad he plays. That double standard eats away at the culture. Players notice that. Fans notice that. If you want to build a true competitive environment, the quarterback can't be excluded. That's why people are so upset with Pete's stance. It feels like favoritism, and favoritism is poison in a locker room. But here's the thing. Pete is loyal. Maybe too loyal. He's standing by Gino because he believes in him, because he's seen him succeed before. And in a way, you respect that loyalty. But loyalty doesn't win games. Production does. And if the production doesn't change, at some point, even the most loyal coach has to make a tough call. The problem is by the time that decision is made, it might already be too late. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. In what could be one of the most shocking shifts of the NFL offseason, whispers around the league suggest that Tyreek Hill has reportedly left the Miami Dolphins and is now rumored to be donning the silver and black of the Las Vegas Raiders. The rumor, which has yet to receive official confirmation from either team, has sent shockwaves through fan communities and social media alike, igniting debates about the possible impact on both franchises. Sources close to the situation hint that behind-the-scenes negotiations may have intensified after Hill's time in Miami was reportedly marked by growing tension over offensive schemes and the team's long-term vision. While Hill dazzled with his trademark speed and agility on the field, insiders say the Dolphins' management struggled to fully integrate the wide receiver into their evolving offensive strategies, potentially paving the way for a dramatic exit. The Raiders, known for their bold offseason maneuvers, are rumored to have swooped in with a deal designed to maximize Hill's talents, creating an offense that could terrify defenses across the league. Speculation is rife that this move signals a major shakeup in the AFC West, where rivals are already bracing for the possibility of Hill becoming a game-changer in Las Vegas. Fans are envisioning electric plays, deep connections, and highlight reel touchdowns that could define the Raiders' upcoming season. As the rumor circulates, questions abound. How will Hill adjust to his new environment? Can he forge chemistry with the Raiders' quarterback quickly enough to make an immediate impact? And perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for the Dolphins, who now face the challenge of replacing one of the league's most dynamic offensive weapons? Analysts are already speculating on potential trade implications, draft strategies, and the domino effect this move could trigger across the NFL landscape. For now, the story remains tantalizingly unconfirmed, fueling endless chatter in locker rooms, sports bars, and online forums. One thing is certain. If even half of these rumors hold true, Tyreek Hill's rumored switch to the Raiders might be the off-season story that keeps fans talking long after the headlines fade. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.